Hello and welcome to today's partner web conference. This is Fast Track Dynamics 365 for Finance and Operations Enterprise Edition Tech Talk. Today's topic, visual scheduling for production orders in Kanbans. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Senior Program Manager Johan Hoffmann, and on Q&A we have Senior Software Engineer Anders Sorensen. So without any further delay, Johan, over to you.
Thank you. Welcome to this session. My name is Johan Hoffmann. On the agenda today, we have two topics: visual scheduling for production and batch orders, and visual scheduling for lean. In visual scheduling for production and batch orders, I'm going to talk about how you can use visual scheduling capabilities to optimize the tactical production plan, taking material and capacity constraints into account. On the topic visual scheduling for lean or Kanbans, I'm going to show you how you can use the new Kanban scheduling board to manually plan and adjust the sequence of manufacturing Kanbans. Looking at the first topic, visual scheduling for production and batch orders. First, I'll go through a basic configuration of the Gantt chart. In the basic configuration part, I will look at the resource view and the order view. These are two basic views that you can use. Then we're going to talk about the content menu, where you can configure which kind of data you want to see in the Gantt chart. Then we're going to look at the views menu, where you can set up configuration for the resource and the order view. We're also going to talk about how to adjust the time scale in the Gantt chart. After we've gone through the basic configuration of the chart, we're going to look at the visual scheduling capabilities in the Gantt chart. We're going to show you drag and drop options, how you can schedule from a menu, the use of a capacity bar to see the capacity load on resources, a new material availability capabilities in the Gantt chart. We can see we're also going to talk about how you can reassign a job in the Gantt chart from one resource to the other, and how you can load resources, taking resource capabilities into account, how you can load resources to the Gantt chart. So I'll jump to the application to start showing you these new capabilities. We will use two scheduled production orders to show you an example of the use of the Gantt chart. So I have two production orders prepared here. These are production orders for the same product, and they are both in status scheduled. I've now selected the two production orders in the production orders list page, and from the schedule menu, I have a menu button, the Gantt chart, where I can open the Gantt chart. The Gantt chart is now opened, and the jobs from the two production orders are loaded to the Gantt chart. As we are producing the same products for both orders, we have similar jobs for both orders. So we have two assembly jobs, two testing jobs, and two packing jobs. As we have more than one order loaded to the chart, we might want to see which jobs are belonging to the same order. And we can use a function called toggle order highlight to do that. So from the action pane and the activity tab, we have an option called toggle order highlight. If I select that, I can see that the jobs belonging to the selected order will have the same color now. So we can now highlight that. We are now looking at all the jobs in what we call the resource view. In the resource view, all jobs are grouped under a resource, on the resource where the job is scheduled by job scheduling the production order. So if we look at the assembly jobs, the first assembly job is grouped under a resource called 1211. So it has a node. This node can be expanded and collapsed. The other assembly job is scheduled and grouped under a different resource called 1212. The testing jobs are also scheduled on individual resources, and that is also why these two jobs can run in parallel, because they are planned on two different resources. If we are looking at the packing job or the packing jobs, they are both grouped under the same resource 1222, and they are not running in parallel, because if they were running in parallel, we would be overbooking the resource in that period. As you can see, the grouping levels are nodes in the Gantt chart with an expand and a collapse option. We also have the expand and collapse option in the action pane. So in the action pane, we can expand and collapse. And if we, for example, select the collapse option, we'll collapse all the nodes that are present in the chart. Now I'll again select the expand all option. The other view, the order view. So it's also, you can select the other view from the action pane, from the Gantt chart tab. So if I select that, I will see the order view, and I'll see the nodes here collapsed, so I'll go and expand them. And in the order view, the jobs are belonging to the same order are grouped under the production order. So this can be handy if you want to have a better overview of individual production orders. Then you'll see them under individual nodes. So I'll switch back to the resource view, and then look a little bit about the data that we are loading to the Gantt chart. The data we are loading to the Gantt chart can be controlled from the content menu that is called from the action pane here. So I'm going to open the content menu. So the content menu have 4 tabs: a general tab, where you can select which data in general should be loaded. Do we want to load the resource calendar to the chart? Do we want to, for example, show links between connected jobs belonging to the same production order? And the 3 other tabs are production, planned production, and projects. If we select the production tab, we first select whether we want to load data coming from scheduled production orders. So that is controlled in the load production data field here. So that is selected. And I can also select whether I want to see the 6 different jobs types that you have for production and batch orders. In this setup, we have confirmed that we want to load all available job types. For this example, I only have a process job for these 2 production orders, so I'll only see the process jobs. But if I had setup jobs, scheduled, transport jobs, then I could also load those jobs to the chart. Here I can also, in general, set up if I want to see finished or already completed jobs in the chart. That is not the case here. Jobs reserving capacity or not. So these are the options for the production tab. We also have an option here to show material availability. I'm going to click that option, and so we can see what that means when I click that. Planned production orders. These are jobs from planned production orders generated by master planning. Planned production orders are not yet firmed into real production orders. But if you want to look at the plan made by the master planning, then you can also load these kind of jobs into the Gantt chart. And you have the same option as from the production tab. And lastly, you can also load project activities to the chart. And we do not do that in this demo. So now confirming my content. I'm back again, and I'll again toggle the order highlights so we can distinguish between the 2 orders. What we can see here is we loaded what we call the material availability check from the content menu. And the material availability check tells us about when materials are available. If we look at the first job, we can actually see here that from this box with the check mark tells us when materials for the job is available. So this testing job is scheduled to start on the 24th, but materials will first be available on the 30th. So materials will be late for this job. As materials are late for the job, that is indicated by a warning icon on the job itself. So it is it's very visible for the user that there's an issue with this job. We will later see how we can schedule around these material shortages. We can also see that the assembly job is risking to go late because materials will not be ready when the job is scheduled to start. We can see, if we can get more details about which materials that are actually consumed by the different jobs from the job dialog. The job dialog is opened by double-clicking on the job. So here we get elaborated information about the job itself, when it's scheduled to start and complete, and what is the quantity that we want to produce on this job. But to the job dialog, we also added a job dialog or a material section, so you can see what is the material that is consumed by this one. So if we look at this one, we have a material availability date on the 30th, and that is of course also indicated with the icon of the box with the check mark. And looking at the other job, you can also see that we have a planned start or scheduled start date and scheduled start time. And we also have two materials, and they should be available at 10 a.m. So that is 2 hours late, and that is why the jobs are shown with a warning icon that we risk running late on this job. So that was a little bit about the content we load to the Gantt chart and how we can see material availability. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the views menu. In the views menu, we configure how we want to configure the resource view and the order view. So opening the views menu, it has two tabs, one for the resource view and one for the order view. In the views menu, you can configure what we call the grouping levels, and that is how we want to group jobs in the chart. So as I told you before, the resource view, we by default group the jobs under a resource, so that is by default selected in the views menu. However, you can add additional grouping levels. So if you, for example, want to add the resource group in the grouping levels in the chart, you can do that. And also below the resource, you can, for example, also select to see the order status. Also, what we added here is an option to have an indication of capacity availability on the resources by enabling this show capacity bar. So let us try to do that. Another thing is, should groups initially be collapsed? It's a no and yes. I set it here to no. That means that the nodes in the Gantt charts are by default expanded when I open the Gantt chart. And then I don't have to use the expand all option up here all the time because that is by default expanded. But I can also select to have the nodes in the chart by default collapsed if I have a lot of grouping nodes in my chart. We can also look at how we can configure the view for the order view, and we have the same options to configure the grouping levels and also configure the groups whether they should be initially collapsed or expanded. So with this setting, where I chose additional grouping levels and also showing the capacity bar, I'll confirm the configuration of the view. And as you can see now, I added the extra grouping level of the resource group. So both the assembly job and the testing jobs are on the same schedule, on the same resources, on the same resource group, on resources in the same resource group. And we also have a resource group for the packing. What I also loaded to the chart was a grouping level for the status. So we also added the schedule status here. I'll go back to the view menu and deselect the order status and the resource group to have a more simple view. So now back again in the chart. And what we can also see is the capacity bar that I selected to view in the chart. So you can see the capacity bar here appears as blue in the duration of the assembly and testing and packing jobs. The blue color indicates that the resource, in this case 1211, is booked to its full capacity in the duration of the assembly job. Outside after the assembly job on this resource, there is no capacity booked, and the resource or the capacity bar does not appear, meaning that we have free capacity in this time interval. What we will later see is then when we start overbooking a resource, the capacity bar will change the color from the blue to a red color and be a little bit thicker, indicating that we have overbooked the resource in that time interval. The last thing I'm going to talk a little bit about is the colors. We saw how we can use the color to highlight jobs belonging to the same order by the use of the toggle order highlight button in the action pane. But we also have the ability to configure colors in general for jobs from the color menu. And we have in this menu, we can select whether we want to use theme colors. In this case, we confirmed that we use theme colors. Theme colors are colors that are general for colors in the application. And you have a special place in the application where you can set up the theme colors used for applications elements in general. So we are using the theme colors. We can deviate from doing that and then use our own or define our own colors that we want to use in the Gantt chart. For example, for activities or how to for the order highlight, I could select a different color for that. But we are using the theme color here. We also have a production, plan production, and project tab. And in this case, we use active and passive, but we can also change if we deviate from using the theme color and then use production order colors. So on the production order, you can set up a color code, and then you will get colors for chosen specific for specific production orders. And then you can also set up individual colors for the different job types and the different job statuses. But in this example, we are sticking to the use of the theme colors. So that concluded the part of the topic where I talked about how to configure the Gantt chart. First, talking about the use of the content menu, where you select which kind of data you want to see in the chart. You want to see only scheduled production jobs, or do you also want to see jobs from planned production orders, and do you want to load project activities into the chart? Also, how you can enable the material availability information with the little box with the check mark indicating when materials are available, and the warning icon if a job is risking running late because of material shortage. We also looked at the views menu, where you can configure the order view and the resource view by introducing or configuring grouping levels, and also enabling the capacity bar, so you can get an indication of available capacity for the different resources. So after completing this part of the topic, I'll go to the scheduling part, how we can do visual scheduling in the Gantt chart. So let's try to look at the testing jobs here, where we have a material constraint. Materials will first be available at the 30th, and this job is scheduled to start on the 24th. So let's try to see options for scheduling around the material constraint that we have for this job. So in order to do that, I want to expand the time scale. So the time scale in this Gantt chart is configured to start on the 23rd and end at the 1st of December. When I start scheduling, I will move the jobs a little bit ahead in the future. So I need more space And to get more space in the chart, I use the time scale dialog. And from here, I can select in which time unit I want to see my jobs. I chose days here, but I also have options to see minutes, hours, weeks, or months. Also the increment of the time unit. So this is by 1 day. It could also be every second day or whatever the number I select here. And then the from date and the to date. And I'm going to extend a little bit. This is configured to end of the 1st of December, but let's say I'm going to extend it to 14th of September and then confirm it. And what you see now is that I extended the time scale, introducing more space so I can do my scheduling. And what you can also see from the time scale is some of the days have like a more gray background, and that represents a weekend where we do not have capacity, and that is completely controlled by the resource calendar that is associated the resources. So it's indicated in which period of times you have days without capacity. So let's see, let's try to schedule a little bit in the chart. Looking at the testing job here, I have an option to drag and drop or schedule with drag and drop. So if I select this job, I can drag it, and I can drag it to the other side of the material availability date. And as I did that, you can see that the warning icon disappeared from the testing job, meaning that this job now doesn't have an issue. I also have other options for scheduling. I'll show you that. So I'll undo the first scheduling I did with the drag and drop, and I can do that from the undo function in the menu, and the job is now back again. I can always undo my scheduling by using the undo, as long as I don't save my scheduling result. So I save changes by using the save button or by confirming my changes when I close the Gantt chart. But until saving, I can always undo my changes. Another way to schedule a job or selected jobs is selecting one or more jobs here, and then use the content menu or context menu. And the context menu is opened by right-clicking. And by right-clicking, I get this little context menu where I have different scheduling options. I'll use a scheduling option called Schedule from Material Availability. Doing that, again, will schedule it forward from the material availability date. And I have even more options, so I'll undo it again. Again, selecting the job from the activity menu. I have the same, I also have a possibility to schedule here. I can do that from the schedule job menu. And there I have an option called schedule forward from material availability date. And again, doing that, it will schedule it forward. So that was 3 different ways of scheduling, either by the use of drag and drop from a context menu or from the schedule job menu in the action pane. So now I scheduled or rescheduled the testing job, but the dependent jobs, the assembly job and the packing jobs also need to be rescheduled. I cannot start the packing job before the testing job has been completed. And in order to reschedule the packing job, I can again use my context menu. So I'm right-clicking, and then I have an option called Schedule Next Job, Next Jobs. Selecting that will automatically schedule the packing job, so it starts when the testing job ends. Now also to reschedule the assembly job so it ends when the testing job starts, I can again use my context menu, and then I have schedule previous jobs, and then this job is now rescheduled. So the jobs for these orders are now rescheduled, and we are good to go with that. But I also want to reschedule the jobs for the second production order. So quickly I'll use the same option, schedule from material availability, rescheduling the second testing job. That is fine. And now I also want to schedule the two other jobs, the assembly and the packing jobs. And I can do that again from the context menu. And instead of scheduling one job at a time, I have the option to schedule around the selected job. So selecting this option. Now in one go, reschedule the assembly and the packing job for that. So that is all good. There's only one problem here, and that is highlighted with the capacity bar on the packing resource 1222, because when we did the rescheduling, the two packing jobs are scheduled to start on the same time, and we are scheduling on the same resource 1222. So the resource will be overbooked in this time interval, and that is indicated by the red color of the capacity bar. So in order to resolve this capacity conflict, we have an option called Arrange Jobs. And I use this function by selecting the two conflicting jobs. So these are now multi-selected in the chart. And then I have the option Arrange Jobs from the menu here. But I also have the option in the context menu, Arrange Jobs, completely the same. So I selected that, and you can see that one of the packing jobs was now rescheduled, so they are not conflicting anymore, and the capacity is also blue now. So that was a way to resolve the capacity conflict here. So what I showed you here was a little bit around how you can schedule in the Gantt chart, either by drag and drop using the context menu or from menu items in the action pane. So the next scenario we are going to talk about is how you can reassign a job from one resource to the other. So let's anticipate that this resource 1211 for the first assembly job is not available. This is a worker, maybe he's calling in sick, so he will not be able to do the job on the scheduled time. So what we can do now is we can reassign this job to another resource, and we can do that as a drag and drop action. So let's do that. So I'll drag it to the other assembly worker. So that is fine. Now the two jobs are on the same resource for the same worker. But as you can see, I get the capacity conflict because these two jobs are scheduled to start at the same time. Then I can, of course, schedule around that, as I showed you before, maybe delaying the orders further. So that is one way to do it. With regards to the reassign activity, as I showed you now, it was a drag and drop interaction. I also have another option for reassigning. I'll show you that. First, I'll undo my reassignment because I didn't save the change. So if I select the job here, I can use the schedule job menu that I showed you before for rescheduling a job, but I can also use this menu for reassigning a job, change the resource for a job to another. So I do that by selecting the job and then select this change resource option. And then in the drop-down, I get a list of all the available or the resources loaded to the chart. So I only see resources already loaded to the chart. What I also get information about in this lookup is whether the resource is applicable for the selected job or not. And that is seen in the applicable column. So I can see there's only one resource that is applicable for the assembly job, and that is, of course, the second assembly worker. The speaker worker and the packing worker, they are not, they don't have the capabilities of doing the assembly job. So I utilize the resource capabilities that we have in our resource model. So in this case, I can again select resource 12, and the job is reassigned to that resource. But let's anticipate that we cannot delay these orders further. So instead of reassigning to an existing resource in the chart and then overbooking that, we could look for resources that we have that are not currently loaded to the chart. So what we see here is resources that are utilized by the 2 production orders, that are scheduled on the 2 production orders. Only those resources are loaded to the chart. But we also have other resources that are not scheduled, where the jobs for these 2 production orders are not scheduled. And we could look at these additional resources that we have and see if we have an applicable resource that can do the job. So let me again try to undo the reassignment I did to 1212 and back again, and look at an option we have called Show Additional Resources. So selecting this option will open a dialog that will provide me with all the available resources that we have. So this is just a list of all the resources that we have. And what we can see also in this list is also whether the resource is applicable for the job or not. So we have a resource called here, Speaker Assembly Worker for 1214, and this resource is actually applicable. This resource is not loaded to the chart, but selecting this resource in the list, and we could multi-select here, so we could have other resources we also wanted to load, applicable or not. But I want to load this resource to the chart, and confirming this selection will then load resource 1214 to the chart. And as of now, this resource is empty, or there's no jobs booked on that resource. And that is actually good for our scenario, because as 2012 is not available anymore, I can drag the job to that resource, and now we have the assembly, the first assembly job on 1214 instead of 1211. So this was a way to reassign a job from one resource to the other, and load additional resources to the Gantt chart. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is a little bit more about which options we have in the content menu. If I select a specific job here and right-click and look at the content menu, we looked at how we can schedule previous jobs and next jobs and schedule around jobs. But here we also see the toggle order highlight option. So selecting that, I'm back to where I started with the blue color. But again, if I want to highlight jobs for this order, I can do that from this menu. And the last option I have is to get a more detailed view of the capacity load for this resource. So selecting that will open a chart for the capacity load on the resource. So here we can see how this resource now has been booked on the different days. What is the capacity, and what are the production orders booking on the different days. So I'll close this again and back in the Gantt chart. So this little example concluded the topic around how to do visual scheduling in the Gantt chart. And just to reiterate a little bit, I showed you how to reschedule jobs in the Gantt chart, either by the use of the context menu, by the use of functions in the action pane, or by the schedule jobs menu. I showed you how to schedule around material constraints. I showed you how to reassign a job from one resource to the other. And I show you how to use the capacity bar, so you can see if you are overbooking a resource or if a resource is overbooked in a time interval. And I also showed you how to load additional resources to the Gantt chart, also by the use of resource capabilities. So you secure that you scheduled jobs to resources that can actually do the job. So with that said, I'm now going to leave the topic around visual scheduling for production and batch orders and continue to the next topic, that is visual scheduling for Lean and Kanbans. In this section, I also are going to talk a little bit about the basic configuration of Lean. For those of you who are not that familiar with Lean, I'm going to quickly show you how to set up the production flow. And the production flow is kind of the basis for the Kanban rules, where we create Kanban activities. And I'm also going to show you something around scheduled groups. And when we've gone through this basic configuration, then I'll show you how we can do visual scheduling in the Kanban board, Kanban planning board. I'll show you how to plan unplanned Kanban jobs, and how, when we have planned these jobs, how we can reschedule the jobs in the board. So first, looking a little bit about the basic configuration of Kanbans. I'm going back to the application. I'm closing the Gantt chart for production and batch orders. And here I can save my changes, and I'm going to do that because now I have a fine plan. And then I'm going to first open the Lean production flow. The Lean production flow, I prepared a production flow for a speaker driver. And in the Lean production flow, you configure how Kanban activities, or you configure a flow of Kanban activities. So we have a visual. I already defined a Kanban flow, a production flow for speaker driver painting. And if I open a visualization of this, I can see that I have, this is a single activity flow. We could have multiple activities within the flow. This is a simple, very simple one, where I have a painting activity. What I can see from this definition is that this activity is going on what we call a work cell, a Kanban work cell 5101. This has an input warehouse, input location for materials, and output warehouse and output location. We also have a cycle time for this work cell doing the job. If I select it, I can also see what are the materials consumed for this activity. So this is kind of the prerequisites for creating Kanbans, that you have defined a production flow, where you define with what are the activities for the Kanbans you're going to work with. Then we have something called the Kanban rules. And the Kanban rules sets the configuration and the policies for Kanbans. And I defined two, in this example, two Kanban rules for a product called M008. These Kanban rules are of type manufacturing. We have two Kanban, the Kanban rule can have two types, manufacturing Kanbans and the withdrawal Kanban. We are only looking at manufacturing Kanban. We can only schedule Kanbans of type manufacturing. The withdrawal is used for moving materials from warehouse to the production area. Opening one of these Kanban rules that I set up. So this is of type manufacturing. It has a replenishment strategy called scheduling. So Kanbans created from this Kanban rule is created by demand from master planning, but you can also create them manually, as I'll show you. And this Kanban rule is applicable for a product called M008. It could also be applicable for a group of products, but in this case, it's only for one product, and it's a configured product, so it has a product and also a color. So it's configuration of color rosewood. On the Kanban rule, you also have a Kanban quantity, so it will create Kanbans of quantity 10. So we are producing 10 at a time. And from the Kanban rule, you can also create Kanbans. I did that manually in this example. So I have here 7 Kanban defined. These are in an unplanned state, as I'll show you when start scheduling these Kanban activities. The second Kanban rule I have is for the same product, but for a different color, not rosewood, but in this case, oak. On this Kanban rule, I also created 7 Kanbans, or Kanban activities. So this is for the oak. So in all, I have 14 Kanban activities that I would need to schedule. What I showed you first was the production flow, and the Kanban rules are referring to the production flow by selecting the activity on the Kanban rule. This is a very simple production flow. Only have one activity defined, so it's a first plan activity, and I selected the cabinet painting from the production flow I just defined. So that is the relation between the Kanban rule and the production flow. And as you remember, you have the work cell defined for the activity. So now I have Kanbans already created for these 2 products, the oak and the rosewood. And now we're going to see a little bit how we can schedule these Kanban activities on the Kanban board. So I'm going to select an option called, one thing I'll do before I open the Kanban board is look at something called the lean schedule group. So for the 2 Kanbans I created, the oak and the rosewood, I created also 2 groups. So one is here for the oak, and for the oak, I created this group and also associated a cell 1280. That is a work cell, and this item M008, and with the color oak. So that means that all the Kanbans for this item are belonging to this schedule group. I'll show you how that works when we start opening the Kanban scheduling board. And I associated a color to this scheduling group. So this basically means that all the Kanban activities belonging to this group have this color. And I did the same for the rows. I defined that for this product, M008 and color rosewood, and then assigned the red color to that scheduling group. So now let's try to go to the Kanban scheduling board. I open that here. So here I look at the Kanban scheduling board. I pre-selected the work cell 1280. And what I see is I will view Kanban activities from its today's date, and then 5 periods ahead. And one period represents a day. So you'll see today is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. So we are not working in the weekend, and that is defined by the capacity or the calendar, work calendar associated with this work cell. For those who are not familiar with the work cell is kind of a type of a resource group. So going to the work cell 1280 here, this is a resource group marked as type work cell. And on this work cell we also define the work cell capacity. So here we have a throughput of an average of 100 pieces for one period per day. So going back to the Gantt chart, we also for the period get an indication of the capacity and how much of the capacity we reserve for the period. So on this Wednesday we have a capacity for making 100 pieces, but we didn't plan anything yet. And the period here is from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. defined by the capacity calendar. So now we are going to look at how we can schedule these Kanban activities in the chart. And we can do that by loading unplanned capacity jobs or activities to the chart. From this little button, I get an indication that we have 14 unplanned Kanban jobs for this work cell. And these are the Kanban activities I created on the 2 Kanban rules I showed you. So I can select this option, and doing that will open a dialog where I see all the unplanned jobs. I can also open this dialog from the action pane. I will open the same dialog from the action pane. So as these two, as we have Kanbans with 2 different colors for the same product, going to be painted in the same work cell, we probably want to paint one color at the time. So let's say that we want to schedule all the oaks before the rosewoods. So I can use the filter here to filter on the oak, on the Kanban jobs for painting the oak in the oak color. So I'll then filter on the product number field. So I'll put in an asterisk and then oak, and then select that. And then you can see I filtered only on the oak ones. And then I select what I want to load to the chart. I select all these jobs, and I also select in which period I want to schedule the Kanban jobs. So if I look at the drop down here, I see all the periods that are loaded to the chart. So the 5 periods loaded to the chart. So I select Wednesday today, and then confirm my selection. And now you can see all the 7 jobs for painting oak are loaded to the first period. So what you can see now is that I actually scheduled making 70 or painting 70 pieces out of 100 available for the day. So I still have capacity to paint 30. I also have like an indication here on capacity bar, showing that from 7 to around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I have booked the work cell on the Wednesday, but after that I actually have free capacity. From this little indication on the button for unplanned jobs, I can also see that now from having 14 unplanned jobs, I now only have 7 unplanned jobs. And selecting that would be the rosewood jobs. So let's say that I also now want to schedule these. So I select all of them and confirm my selection. So what you can see now is that it actually tried to book everything on the selected period. So I again selected the period Wednesday, but now I overbooked my Wednesday. So actually I scheduled to paint 140 pieces, whereas I only have capacity for 100 pieces. And I get a warning icon here saying that this period is now overbooked. I can also see that from the capacity bar that it's overbooking the capacity in this time interval. I have options to reschedule these jobs to other periods with drag and drop, as I'll show you. But before doing that, I'll show you how you can also automatically schedule with capacity constraints. So what I want to do now is select all the rosewood jobs in the chart. So I multi-selected those, and then I can revert the status of the selected jobs. So I'm reverting the status back to not planned. So doing that, I'll be back, only have the oak jobs scheduled. Again, I have 7 unplanned jobs. I'll open the dialog. And then I can again select all the jobs I want to schedule for the Wednesday because I still have some available capacity for the Wednesday. But then I enable this option called automatic planning. And the automatic planning option will take booked capacity for the period into account when scheduling. So I'll show you that if I select OK here. Now you can see that it filled up the remaining part of the period with the 3 Kanbans for Kanban jobs for the Rosewood. And then it moved to the next period, scheduling the remaining jobs. So that I showed you here how you can use automatic planning. Then we have some options for rescheduling already planned activities, and I can reschedule one or more selected jobs. If I, for example, select this job, I have some option for scheduling one or more selected job forward and backward. So this Kanban is called 544. If I select this job and then select the option called forward, you can see how I moved this job ahead of the next job. I also have backwards, so I can move it back again. I can also multi-select. So now I selected 44 and 45, and then forward. Then it moved these 2 jobs forward from job 546. So that was a backward and forward option. Then I also have an option called next period or previous period. So let's say we want to move this job for 46 to the next period. Then I select this option, and then I can select whether I want this job to be planned for the start of the period or the end of the period. So let's try to use start of next period. Next period will be the Tuesday. So selecting that, you can see we now placed the job on the start of the next period. And then I have previous period, so I could move it back again to the start of the previous period. So I now showed you how to reschedule by the use of the move functions in the action pane, but we also enable the drag and drop options for the Gantt chart. Oh, sorry, not Gantt chart, but the Kanban board for scheduling. So here I can multi-select 2 jobs, and then I can drag it to the next period. And by doing that, you can see it automatically. I don't think I put it to the next period. I just schedule it to the end of the existing period, but I'll try again. And now they are in the new period, and it will use automatic planning here, so it will respect already booked capacity. Also within the same period, I can move the job as I did here. Also, you can see that that you have the colors here, and these colors is from the configuration of the lean scheduling groups. So by showing you this example of how to reschedule jobs, that concluded the second topic of how to plan unplanned jobs and reschedule jobs in the new Kanban scheduling board. Just to wrap up what I showed you here, I showed you first a simple definition of a lean production flow with one activity. Then I showed you 2 Kanban rules that are referring to this production flow. One Kanban rule for painting oak color and one for painting rose color. These were manufacturing Kanbans, and I showed you how to generate that we have generated Kanbans under these Kanban rules, 14 Kanban activities, and I showed you how to load these unplanned Kanban jobs to the work cell 1280 in this case. And then how to use automatically scheduling, respecting already booked capacity, and then how to move around rescheduling already scheduled Kanban jobs in the Kanban schedule board. So with that said, this is the end of this demo. I hope you found it useful and useful. Thank you very much for this.
All right, thank you, Johan. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring your attention to a link that I posted in the conversation pane. That's a link to a short survey for this web conference, and we ask that you please take a moment before logging out to access it. We hope that you found today's information helpful, and if you enjoyed today's web conference or have feedback on how we can provide you with a better event, this is your chance to let us know. The survey scores are on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible. And that's going to conclude today's partner web conference. Attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters Johan and Anders, and thank you, audience, for logging in and joining us today.